Welcome back, everyone. Now, I recently did a poll and asked people what they thought I could make in my next video. So today when I was at the op shop, I found this piece of canvas fabric. It was, as you can see, some bits and pieces. And I thought, okay, let's make a tote bag. Now, this fabric's really good for a tote bag because it's actually a canvas. You can see it's quite firm. But I am going to line it nonetheless just to make it a little prettier on the inside so I can cover all my raw edge seams. So I've got enough. I've had to jiggle around and make a pattern that sort of fits what I've got here. So in my previous videos, you might have seen me use this little template to make a fabric box. So what I've basically done is just increase the size of this. So hopefully I'm in camera here. The top is 30 centimeters or 12 inches. It's going to be 12 inches wide. So remember, you're going to take some seam allowance off that. And the side is 35 centimeters or 14.5 inches. Now again, at the bottom, just like the original template, I've taken out this little section here so that we can do the square box corners at the bottom. Now this one, I've made it a little bit larger. This is 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. So that's my pattern. And I will put a picture of this on the post area so that you can see it. Now, the other thing that I did was I had to think about this. Now, this is 45 centimeters for a strap. However, I have to work within the confines of what fabrics are in this scrap. So the actual fabrics that I had are not quite 45 centimeters. It's just under. So I'm going to use this piece to make the two handles. And because it is actually a canvas, it's going to be quite firm and that'll be fine. I've also decided to make an interior, calico interior. I just like that. Plus I wanted to show you a couple of things with that. So I'm just going to cut out the box corners and so we can get started. Now this project shouldn't take very long to do. And if I can get some video at the sewing machine, I will definitely do that. The other thing you might notice here is that this edge is folded. Now, I had enough material to do that, and it's not something I normally do, but I'm just going to see if it works. I normally would have that cut along this bottom and I would re-sew it. But as I said, I'm just trying things out and seeing how they work. So let's get my other piece of fabric here. I've got it pinned together. And now I'm just going to, I had already done a little bit of marking on this. I'm just going to mark it with my little pencil here. Just make sure that you can see that. And then I'm just going to cut it out. So basically, there's not a lot of cutting involved in this project. It's a very simple tote. I like to make totes. They're great things to donate. They're great things to use, to give as gifts. Most people enjoy getting a tote, especially if you've made it. So that's the exterior. This is the interior lining. And now I'm going to have a look at what I can do with the straps. So I think I need to cut that down there because, let me just get my cutting board. Sorry, I was all ready this morning and then I seem to have become a bit unorganized. So I'm just going to use my rotary cutter and my ruler. Now, I don't normally use this ruler for cutting, but I'm using it today very carefully because my plastic ruler makes a terrible shine on the camera and I don't like that. Now, I'm just going to go with whatever's here because that's all I've got. I've only got this other little piece, which I could make into a pocket to put in the interior, but I'm not sure if I'll do that. And I don't really have a zipper. Would have been good if I had a zipper and I could have done that. But I may find one while I'm talking to you. So I'm just going to do this in a very strange way. So when you make the straps, I'll just show you. The straps are really easy to do. Now, because this is not a very light fabric, it's actually quite firm. What you do is take it to the iron and you press it in half like that. Then when you have that central part, the central line there. You actually bring your fabrics back to the central line. And if I've got a ruler here, I might just try and do that and show you with pencil. So if you flatten it out and get it quite firm just by pressing it, you will see that you will get a line down the center there. It is a nice line. So let's put some pencil on that so that you can actually see it. And if I'm off screen on one edge, I'm sorry. This is a bigger project and I don't have a lot of space. So, okay, so there's my central line. Now, the next thing you do is you bring this outer fabric into the center. And again, you would go to the sewing machine, go to the iron and give that a really good press. And then you bring the other side into the central seam again and you give it a really good press. You can leave a little tiny gap here in the middle. That's okay. And it often is beneficial because when you fold the fabrics back together like this, you've got that little tiny gap, which means it sits really flat. I'm sorry, today I'm a little bit unorganized, it would seem. So then you pin it along here. Again, I would give this a good press with the iron, and that will make sure that when you go to sew it, it's going to sit really very well. So basically, that's going to be how the handles are made, and of course you just repeat this on the other handle. So this is a really simple little bag that you can make. And of course I've got lovely fabric here, but you could decorate the outside of it however you wanted. So that's one done. So let's do the other one as well while we're here. And as I said, if I can do some filming at the sewing machine, I am happy to try and do that. So there we go. Again into the center. Now because this fabric is so firm, it is actually doing this quite easily. Now if your fabric is not quite as firm as this one, you might want to add some interfacings like some iron-on stabilizer just to give your handle a little bit more strength. And that's not a bad thing to do if you have a lighter fabric. If this was just cotton, I would do that because cottons really could do with a little bit of extra stabilization, and the handles have to take quite a bit of wear, so it would be best to make them a little bit firmer but still comfortable in your hand. Okay, so that's two handles made that just need sewing. So when I go to the sewing machine, where am I going to sew? Well, I'm going to start at this end. I'm going to start at this end because my pins are going this way and I need to remove my pins. So I'm going to start here and I'm basically going to sew all the way around. Down here, I'm going to go across there and then I'm going to go all the way back up. So that's how they're going to be sewn. If you want to make them a little bit stronger, or you think you desire this, you could put a line down the middle. I never do if it's a thicker fabric. Now as for the lining and the outer, so this is the outer. For this one, I'm actually just going to sew down the edge. So I'm going to sew down this edge. I'm going to sew down this edge. And I'm going to do exactly the same for the linings. Okay, so let's get started here. So I'm just going to use the edge of my foot here. Just going to have a look if that's too far in. It is too far in. So I'm just going to use the edge of the plastic bit of my foot there as my guide. So that's just going to stay on the edge. And I'm going to make a 2.5 width stitch. So let's start. Just go slow. Pull your pins out so that you don't run over them. Hope the sewing machine's not too loud. can try. Now, I'm just going slowly here. And I tend to do the edge where it's folded over first. I didn't actually end up pressing it because it is quite firm. So I'm just adjusting it so it's sitting nice and straight. So when I get down here to the end, oops, sorry, move the camera. I'm going to just lift the back foot pivot, go across to the other side, just eyeball it, and I'm going to come back in this direction. So you can see it doesn't take very long to do this. Just checking the back there. My stitching is a little bit, something wrong with my stitching. Now I'm not going to do the end of this one here. I'm just going to leave that. I don't need to do the end there. Now I'm back from the sewing machine and I just wanted to show you, I've done these boxed corners, but I wanted to make a comment about the boxed corners. Now I had originally had my material on the fold here, but I forgot to factor in the fact that if I sew down here, which I end up sewing 1 centimetre seam allowance, this would leave this section here, if I didn't sew it, to be 6 centimetres. So when I tried to put the two edges together to make the box corner, they didn't work. So to remedy that, I actually sewed a 1 centimetre seam allowance at the bottom, giving me a 5 centimetre by 5 centimetre gap here, which means that you get a perfect corner. And I'm going to show you that on this little sample. So if, for example, as I had done in my piece, I had this was on the fold, if I don't have that line, this becomes 6.5 centimetres. But because I have a seam allowance here of 1 centimetre, that becomes 5.5. And you can't put them together. So what I had to do was reduce this back down to 5.5. So when you open up the piece, they fit together perfectly. And that's what you need to do. So the takeaway from this is that when you cut that out and you sew the seams, measure it, make sure that this one, 5.5, 5.5, or whatever measurement you choose to make that box corner, that both of these two sides are the same, because otherwise you're going to be scratching your head as to why they will not sit flat. Now if you do them perfectly the same, you put the two seams in the center together, you just see how that perfectly just fits. It's really no fuss. And I usually I make the seams go in opposite directions just because it's a little bit better. So then what you do is you take it to the sewing machine and you do another seam here. And I actually, once I've done that seam, I often turn it over and do that seam again on the back, because this section of your bag holds a lot of weight and needs to be very, very strong. And in this, I'm also going to try a new process that I haven't done before, where I attach the lining to this as well. But let's get on to how to put the actual handles on. So here's my bag, and what I'm going to do, got a very little ruler here, I'm going to measure, so that's roughly 29. So I need to put, I think I might put the handles about 5 centimetres from the edge. Now these are quite large handles, so you're going to see they're going to come in quite a bit when we've done that. I think that will be fine. So, okay, so I've turned the bag inside out. Now the next thing to do is to actually apply the handles. Now when you apply the handles, you apply them here. Now I've measured the 5 centimetres. You apply them there. Now if you want to go away and tack this down with your sewing machine, please feel free to do that. I'm just going to pin them. And I'm going to turn it around this way, which is a little bit easier for me. So I'm just going to pin them. So I've got those lines there. I'm just going to line them up and I'm going to pin them. And make sure you don't have this twisted. So when you have it, it'll fold up like that. So just be careful not to twist it. Now on the other side, I'm just going to flip it over and I'm going to use these two as guides. I'm going to take, now I always say, I'm just going to say this to you, this is a U. So you need to make sure that the other side is exactly the same. So you need to apply it like that, because it is quite easy to get it mixed up and put it on incorrectly. And that's a bit sad because then you'll have to do a bunch of unpicking. So try not to do that. So I have done it before. So it happens and then you just spend a leisurely few minutes unpicking. So once we've done that, the next thing you have to do is take your lining. Now this is the right side, this is the right side of the lining. Scoot your little bag inside like that. And make sure your handles are all nicely in there. And the next thing is that you're going to attach this and this together. So you're going to attach the bag and the lining together. Now, how am I going to get this out in the end? Well, we're actually going to leave a section of this open. So I'm basically going to pin from here this way because it's easy on the machine for me, and here. And I'm going to leave that little gap so that I can pull the bag back through. So I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew all the way around the top here. So I'm going to catch this all together, and then when I go back down here, I'm going to leave this as an opening. So that's going to be my opening so I can turn the bag inside out. So I'll be back from the sewing machine very soon. Okay, so I've gone all the way around the top here and I've cleaned it up. Now this was what happens. You get this little bird's nest of threads if you don't pull your thread through at the back. So try not to do that. Now I've left a little gap here, so I'm going to pull the outside like this. All right. So now we've got the exterior of the bag. Now, if you push this back into there, you get the lining back in. So we have this little opening here, and you can fold that over because I've given. Now I'm just trying to position the fabric as neatly as possible here, and I'm just pressing it with my finger. Now if you took it to the iron, you could press this very firmly and it'll be a lot easier. And you can see there I'm just pressing it with my fingers and I'm just adjusting it so that it looks really neat on the front. Then I'm going to hold it with some pins, and then that should hold it firmly enough for me to get it nice and neat and then sew it. So I'm just making sure that it's as neat as possible. So all we have to do is add the pins to the top here. Excuse me. So once we've sewn around the top edge there, this bag will be completed. And if you press this with an iron, you can go around. You can see how pressing with my hands. Now, when I do this, I always bring the lining down so that the outer edge is showing. And so that's what I'll be doing, and I'll be taking it over to the sewing machine. And then I've got some new clips I'm going to show you that I'm going to put on the top edge of this to clip it together so it becomes a clippable bag. So again, if you do this with a sewing machine, it will of course sit much better. Now I'm just going to show you this clip. There's some new clips that I purchased recently. They're magnetized. So basically it just sits over the top like that, and then you press it down. So I'll show you that when I come back again, and then the bag will be finished. Okay, I came back from the sewing machine and I wanted to mention a few things that I probably haven't mentioned. Now, I'm really liking this little bag. I think it's a great little bag. We've got the nice little box corner down here, so it's going to sit really nicely. And around the top here, I did 2 sets of stitching, only because it acts with the dual purpose of holding this as well, and it just gives a nice decorative edge. Now, I'm going to actually use some clamp, a little clamp that I haven't used before. This is a little magnetic clamp, and I don't know if you can see this, but it has some little notches in here which hold it in. And I've just measured where it goes, and one of the best ways to probably do that is just like that. And you use, I've got some jewelry pliers here, and you just press it down. So this is a little bit fiddly, and I've got to make sure that I keep it in exactly, so that's already moved. I need to keep it in exactly the right place. There's the right place. So I'm just going to hold it there, and you can see just, I'll get out of the way in a minute. Okay, so I thought it might scratch it. So originally I had this piece of cloth and I had it over the top, but they're actually quite sturdy, and I'm just going to make sure I've got that really pressed down there. I've never used these before. They were just something I found, and I must admit I bought them off Temu. That's better. I didn't have it tight enough. So that's today's first little tote bag. I think that's really cute. I really like that. I like the little box bottom. I like the colors. I like this little clip here. I like the handles. I think it's a great size, and I think it will sell well at the market stall that I've got coming up, where I'm donating these things that I'm actually making. And the other thing I like about it, I'm just checking that because I've never used them before, so I'm a bit cautious whether they're going to actually work. But I like this bag, and I like it even more because A, it wasn't that difficult to make, and B, I love the colour actually. I really do like this colour. I think it's very nice. And as I said, this fabric was just a piece of really cheap fabric. Probably the whole bags cost me about $2 plus this clip. I think these clips, I got them on Temu. I can't remember exactly how much they were, but it's a nice clip. It's just got a little bit of a clip there so that it holds it together. You can see it looks okay, it works okay. That's good. So thank you for joining me, and I hope this inspires you to go off and make your own little bag with the boxed corners at the bottom. It's not a very difficult project, but you end up with something that's really quite useful. Sorry, I just can't get it in the entire, maybe if I lie it that way you can see it better. It's such a useful little item, a great present. You can make one of these and fill it with things, or you could just make a really nice one and put something else on it. The fabrics make it fabulous, you know, great fabrics. As I said, I really like this fabric, and it was only a piece from the op shop today. So if you like the video, please hit the like and subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing some time with me, and I hope you found this video informative. Bye for now.